Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. My grandmother's funeral was a complete shit show, and my sister Sarah made sure of that. Picture this. We're standing around the casket, everyone's crying, the whole 9 yards, and Sarah, my own flesh and blood, decides that's the perfect moment to absolutely destroy me in front of everyone. You never cared about her, she spits out, loud enough for the whole damn room to hear. You never visited, never called, nothing. And now you're here playing the grieving grandchild? I felt my face burn. Every single person in that funeral home turned to look at me, like I was some kind of monster. My cousins, my aunts, even people I didn't recognize. They all had that same look. You know the one. Like they just found out I kicked puppies for fun. But here's the thing that Sarah didn't know, that none of them knew. 3 months before Grandma Rose died, she'd quietly put my name on the deed to her house. Not Sarah's name, not both our names, just mine. And I had no idea why. I stood there, wanting to defend myself, wanting to scream that they didn't know the whole story. But you can't exactly start a fight at your grandmother's funeral, can you? So I just took it. Let Sarah paint me as the selfish, absentee grandchild who only showed up when someone died. The worst part? I was starting to believe her myself. After the funeral, I drove straight to Grandma Rose's house. I needed to be alone, needed to think, and honestly, I needed to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with a house I never expected to inherit. The place looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how that works. Childhood memories make everything seem bigger, don't they? But walking up those familiar steps, smelling that weird combination of lavender and old wood that every grandma's house seems to have, it hit me like a truck. I really was going to miss her. The lawyer had given me the key, along with a manila envelope full of papers I was too emotionally drained to read. Inside, everything was exactly how she'd left it. Her coffee cup still in the sink, a crossword puzzle half finished on the kitchen table. It was like she had just stepped out to get the mail and would be back any minute. That's when I found the first letter. It was sitting right there on the kitchen counter, in an envelope with my name written in her shaky handwriting. Not Sarah's name, mine. And inside was something that made my blood run cold. Danny, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you probably have a lot of questions about the house. Sarah doesn't know about the deed yet, but she will soon enough. Before she does, you need to know what really happened with your father. Check the attic, 3rd box from the left, under the Christmas decorations. I'm sorry I never told you sooner. Love, Grandma Rose. My father? What the hell did my father have to do with anything? He'd been dead for 15 years. I'm not going to lie. Climbing up to that attic felt like walking into a horror movie. You know that feeling when you're pretty sure you're about to find something that's going to change everything? That was me, flashlight in hand, trying not to step through the floorboards. The 3rd box from the left was exactly where she said it would be, under a pile of those creepy vintage Christmas decorations that every grandma seems to collect. My hands were actually shaking as I opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them. All addressed to my grandmother, all from the same person, Detective Michael Torres, dated from 1995 to 2010, the same year my father died. I sat there, in that dusty attic, reading by flashlight, and my whole world started falling apart. My father didn't die in a car accident like we had always been told. He'd been murdered. Shot 3 times outside a bar in downtown Dallas, and according to these letters, the case had never been solved. Detective Torres had been writing to my grandmother for 15 years, updating her on the investigation, apologizing for the lack of progress. But here's the part that really messed me up. My grandmother had been paying him. Not officially, obviously, but there were bank statements in that box showing regular payments to someone named M. Torres Consulting. She'd been funding a private investigation into my father's death for over a decade. Sarah and I had always wondered why Grandma Rose seemed to have money troubles in her later years, why she'd stopped taking those trips to see her sister in Arizona, why she'd started buying generic groceries and wearing the same 3 dresses to church. She'd been spending everything trying to find out who killed our father. I don't know how long I sat in that attic, staring at those letters. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Time kind of stops when your entire family history gets rewritten in the span of 20 minutes. Eventually, I worked up the courage to call Detective Torres. The number was on every single letter, his personal cell phone. At 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, I figured there was no way he'd answer. He picked up on the second ring. "This is Torres." "Detective Torres? My name is Danny Patterson. I think you knew my grandmother, Rose Patterson?" There was a long pause. Then, "Danny, Jesus Christ, kid. I've been waiting for this call for 3 months." "3 months?" "Since your grandmother died. She told me if anything happened to her, you'd be the one to find the letters. She was very specific about that. I'm sorry for your loss, by the way. Rose was a good woman. Detective, I need to know what happened to my father. Really happened. Not the bullshit story we got told as kids. That's a conversation we need to have in person, son. Where are you right now?" I told him I was at my grandmother's house, and he said he could be there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes to prepare myself for whatever truth had been hidden from me for 15 years. While I waited, I called Sarah. It went straight to voicemail. Probably still pissed at me from the funeral. I left her a message anyway. "Sarah, it's me. I'm at Grandma's house, and I found something. Something about Dad. We need to talk. Call me back." She never did.
Detective Torres looked exactly like I'd imagined from his voice. Weathered, tired, the kind of guy who'd seen too much over the years. He showed up at my grandmother's door at midnight with a thick manila folder and a grim expression. "Your father was involved in something he shouldn't have been," he said, settling into Grandma Rose's old recliner like he'd done it 100 times before. "Your grandmother hired me to find out what, exactly, and who killed him for it. Turns out my dad, Tommy Patterson, wasn't just the regular working-class guy I'd always thought he was. He'd been running a side business. Nothing too crazy, just helping people who needed things moved without too many questions asked. Not drugs, Torres was careful to clarify. More like helping people disappear from bad situations. Domestic violence cases mostly. He was actually helping people, Torres said, lighting a cigarette even though we were inside. But he got mixed up with the wrong crowd, started taking jobs that weren't so noble. The night he died, my father was supposed to help a woman named Maria Santos and her 2 kids disappear. Her ex-husband was connected to some pretty nasty people, and she needed to vanish completely. New identities, new life, the whole thing. Problem is, Tommy never showed up to the meeting point. Maria and her kids waited for 3 hours. When he didn't show, they tried to run on their own. What happened to them? Torres's face went dark. They never made it out of the city. My father had been killed to prevent him from helping Maria Santos escape, and when he didn't show up, she and her children were murdered too. 3 people died because someone wanted to make sure Tommy Patterson couldn't do his job. Your grandmother blamed herself, Torres said. She thought if she'd known what your father was up to, she could have stopped him from taking that job. That's when I understood why she'd left me the house, why she'd spent 15 years paying for a private investigation, why she'd never said anything to Sarah about any of it. Sarah had idolized our father. In her mind, he was this perfect guy who died too young in a random accident. Learning the truth would have destroyed her. But me? I'd always known something was off about the story we'd been told. I'd been asking questions since I was 16, and Grandma Rose had seen that. She'd known I could handle the truth. "There's more," Torres said, stubbing at his cigarette. "But what?" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "But what?" "But every time we got close, people started dying, or disappearing, or suddenly deciding they didn't want to talk anymore." He met my eyes. "Your grandmother was scared, Danny, really scared. She was worried that if the wrong people found out she was still investigating, they'd come after her family." "Us? You mean they'd come after me and Sarah?" "That's exactly what I mean." I felt like someone had just punched me in the stomach. All those years I thought my grandmother was just this sweet old lady who baked cookies and watched game shows. Instead, she'd been living in fear, spending her life savings on a dangerous investigation, all while protecting me and Sarah from the truth. "The house," I said suddenly. "She left me the house because she wanted me to continue the investigation." Torres nodded slowly. "That's what she told me 3 months ago. Right before she died, she called me and said she was getting too old to keep fighting, but she thought maybe you'd want to finish what she started. And if I don't, then Maria Santos and her kids never get justice. Your father's death goes unpunished, and whoever killed them all is still out there, probably doing the same thing to other families." I sat there in my grandmother's living room, surrounded by her things, trying to process what Torres was telling me. My quiet, boring life had just been turned upside down. I had a choice to make: walk away and let sleeping dogs lie, or step into a world of danger and corruption that had already cost my family everything. What would I need to do? Torres smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "I was hoping you'd ask that." The next morning, I called in sick to work. I know that sounds irresponsible, but how exactly do you explain to your boss that you need time off to investigate your father's 15-year-old murder? Torres picked me up at 8 a.m. sharp. First stop, the bar where my father was killed. The Rusty Anchor hadn't changed much since 1995. Same neon signs, same cigarette smell embedded in the walls, same type of customers who start drinking before most people had their first cup of coffee. The owner, a guy named Jerry, remembered my father. "Tommy was a good guy," Jerry said, wiping down the bar with a rag that had seen better days. "That's why what happened to him was so messed up." "What exactly did happen?" I asked. Jerry glanced around the bar, making sure we were alone. "Your dad was supposed to meet someone that night. A woman. She never showed up, but Tommy waited in the parking lot for over an hour. When he finally decided to leave, that's when they got him." "They?" "2 guys, black sedan, professional job. 3 shots, all center mass. They were gone before anyone could even call 911. This was new information. Torres never mentioned that my father was waiting for someone. According to the police reports, it had looked like a random robbery. "Jerry," Torres said, "did you ever see the woman Tommy was waiting for?" Jerry's face went pale. "Detective, I already told you 15 years ago I don't know nothing about no woman." But his eyes said otherwise. Jerry knew exactly who my father had been waiting for, and he was terrified to say her name.
It took 3 more visits to the Rusty Anchor before Jerry finally cracked. Turns out, the woman my father was supposed to meet wasn't Maria Santos at all. It was someone else entirely. Someone who'd been using my father's underground railroad to move people, but not for the noble reasons we'd assumed. "Her name was Elena Vasquez," Jerry finally admitted. "She was running girls, young girls. Your father found out what she was really doing and threatened to expose her." I felt sick. My father hadn't been killed trying to help Maria Santos escape her abusive husband. He'd been killed because he'd discovered he was unknowingly helping a human trafficking operation. Elena was using Tommy's network to move girls from safe houses to other places. When he figured out what was happening, he told her he was done, said he was going to the cops. So she had him killed? She had connections, bad people. The kind of don't ask questions when you need someone to disappear permanently. Torres and I spent the rest of the day trying to track down Elena Vasquez. What we found was a trail that led from Dallas to Houston to Mexico City. She'd been running a sophisticated operation, using guys like my father, people who thought they were doing good work, to transport girls across state lines. The worst part? She was still active, still running girls, still using the network my father had helped her build. "We need to find her," I told Torres as we sat in his car outside the police station. "Danny, this woman has been evading law enforcement for 15 years. She's connected to cartels, to organized crime. If we go after her, we'd better be damn sure we know what we're doing. My father died trying to stop her. My grandmother spent her life savings trying to find her. I'm not backing down now." Torres looked at me for a long moment. You sure about this, kid? Because once we start down this road, there's no going back. I thought about my grandmother, living in fear for 15 years, about my father dying in a parking lot because he tried to do the right thing, about Sarah, who still had no idea what our family had been through. I'm sure. Finding Elena Vasquez took 2 more weeks of digging through old records, talking to informants, and following leads that mostly went nowhere. Finally, we got a break. She was running a modeling agency in Houston, the kind of business that looked legitimate on paper, but was actually a front for something much darker. Torres wanted to involve the FBI, but I convinced him to let me try talking to her first. I know that sounds crazy, but I needed to look her in the eye. I needed to understand why my father had to die. The address led us to a sleek office building in downtown Houston. Elena's company, Estrella Talent Management, was on the 14th floor. The waiting room looked like any other talent agency. Headshots on the walls, glamour magazines on the tables, a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "I'm here to see Elena Vasquez," I told the receptionist. "Tell her it's about Tommy Patterson." The receptionist's smile faltered for just a second. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vasquez is in meetings all day. If you'd like to leave a message..." "Tell her Tommy Patterson's son is here. Tell her I have questions about what happened in 1995. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Elena Vasquez in her corner office. She was older than I had expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and expensive clothes. She looked like someone's elegant grandmother, not a human trafficker. "You look like your father," she said, studying my face. "He was a good man. What happened to him was unfortunate." "Unfortunate? You had him killed." Elena's expression didn't change. "Your father was interfering with my business. I tried to reason with him, but he was very stubborn, very idealistic. He was trying to stop you from trafficking girls. I was providing opportunities. Those girls had nothing where they came from. I gave them a chance at a better life." I wanted to reach across that desk and strangle her. This woman had destroyed my family, and she was sitting there talking about opportunities like she was running a charity. "Where is Maria Santos?" I asked. For the first time, Elena looked genuinely surprised. "Maria Santos? What does she have to do with this?" "My father was supposed to help her disappear. Instead, she and her kids were murdered." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she pressed a button on her phone. "Miguel, come in here." A man entered the office, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of presence that made you instinctively step back. Elena said something to him in rapid Spanish, and his face went dark. "It seems we have a problem," Elena said to me. "Miguel tells me that Maria Santos and her children are very much alive. They've been living in Phoenix for the past 15 years, under new identities." I sat in that office staring at Elena Vasquez, trying to process what she'd just told me. If Maria Santos and her kids were alive, then everything Detective Torres had told me was a lie. "I think you need to have a conversation with your detective friend. Ask him about the Santos family. Ask him about the money your grandmother was paying him. Ask him what really happened to your father." My phone was buzzing with text messages. Torres, wondering where I was, asking if I was okay, telling me to call him immediately. I didn't call him back. Instead, I drove straight to his house. He was waiting on the porch, looking nervous. "Danny, where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "I met with Elena Vasquez." "You did what?" "Jesus Christ, Danny, do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "I told her something interesting. She said Maria Santos is alive, living in Phoenix with her kids." Torres was quiet for a long moment, and then he sat down heavily on his porch steps. "Danny, I can explain. You've been lying to me. You've been lying to my grandmother for 15 years. What really happened to my father?" Torres looked older than his years, tired, defeated. "Your father found out I was on Elena's payroll. He threatened to expose me. Said he was going to the FBI. "You killed him?" "I didn't pull the trigger, but I told Elena what he was planning to do. I thought she'd just scare him, maybe pay him off. I never thought she'd have him killed." "And my grandmother? You've been taking her money for 15 years pretending to investigate a murder you helped orchestrate?" Torres nodded, not meeting my eyes. She was so desperate for answers, so willing to pay. I told myself I was just taking money from someone who had plenty of it. She didn't have plenty of it. She spent everything she had trying to find out who killed her son. I know, and I'm sorry. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you the truth. I stood there on his porch, looking at this man who'd been lying to my family for 15 years, who'd helped get my father killed, who'd stolen my grandmother's life savings while pretending to be our ally. "What happens now?" I asked. Torres pulled out his phone. "Now I call the FBI and tell them everything. Elena, the trafficking operation, my involvement in your father's death, all of it. And me? You go home. You tell your sister the truth. You live your life." He looked at me with something that might have been respect. "Your grandmother would be proud of you, Danny. You finished what she started." As I drove home that night, I thought about my grandmother's house, about the deed with my name on it, about Sarah's words at the funeral. "You never cared about her." Sarah was wrong. I'd cared enough to find the truth, even when it was uglier than I had imagined. I'd cared enough to finish what Grandma Rose had started, even when it meant discovering that the people I'd trusted were the ones who had betrayed us. The house on Maple Street was mine now, along with all its secrets. But more importantly, I finally understood why my grandmother had chosen me to inherit them. Some people are meant to live with comfortable lies. Others are meant to dig until they find the truth, no matter how much it hurts. I was definitely the second type. Just like my father had been. Just like Grandma Rose had been. And tomorrow, I'd call Sarah and tell her everything.